Hi, I'm Randy and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And this is the YouTube channel that's dedicated to the construction and development of the Lake Erie and North Shore Railroad. Welcome to episode 9. Big episode. We're going to talk about building a control panel for the turntable. We're going to be wiring some isolated tracks. We're going to be wiring some LEDs. We're going to build the control panel. We're going to be testing and hooking up a power supply, which is also a really cool segment. We're going to be programming the turntable for the controller of the turntable, and we're going to be introducing some really cool techniques and some really useful products that I think, really cool products, I think, that you're going to learn to love and enjoy. But as always, before that, we are going to hear some Railroad Soul.
Across the prairies to the sea, they laid the iron for the rails and we ride. They shared their lives, their hearts, and their pride. They had railway soul.
Hello, welcome back. We're continuing with the turntable installation, and remember now, these tracks along here are all going to be individually powered with an on and off switch, so that if there are engines like this one parked in there and the power is on, they're not going to be running all the time, making a lot of destructive racket. So each one of these tracks is going to have an individually powered source, and then the turntable is going to have a place for its controller to be installed. So what I've done is I've decided to make a second control panel. On my first control panel, I was going to have the control for the turntable here, and these were going to be the on-off switches for the individual tracks. Then I realized I have 9 tracks, so that's not going to work. So I've now put together another control panel, and that has the 9 switches on it. And there's going to be some LED lights here where those little holes are, and then you can see the outline of the turntable and the tracks coming off. And then this is where the turntable controller is going to be. Now this, it hasn't been put together yet. Let me see if I can just zoom out on this. There we go. So this is just a piece of masonite that has been cut and painted. This backing piece of the cabinet here is made exactly the same as the other one, but you'll note if you just turn this up, this is just a drawer from a cabinet, okay? And all I've done is reinforce the drawer with some 1x3, I think it is, or 1x4, whatever it is here. And then just to stabilize it up, and then I've just cut a hole in the back. Okay, and I think these look pretty cool. Just an idea, you know, obviously you can make your own stuff, but you can make these cabinets pretty quick if you just use a drawer. And then I'm just going to put the some magnetic tabs on the top and some hinges on the bottom, so that it just opens like this one. Okay, so the goal today is to get these switches in and then get these tracks wired. Okay, so I'll update you as we go, and I'll actually show you the actual wiring that we're doing, because it's not as, it seems straightforward when you look at a diagram, but when you go to do it, it's a little bit more complicated. So we're going to actually hopefully take you through all the wiring too. Okay, don't go away, things are going to heat up. Hello, we're back. We're continuing the wiring of these tracks here around the turntable. And remember, we want to have individual power supplies to each one of these tracks so that we can shut them on and off, so we don't have a lot of noise when all the engines are parked there. And so I'm going to slowly slip over here to the control panel. So this is the temporary control panel that I've showed you, and I've got some of the switches installed, and you can see the area where the turntable, which I'm going to mark, and the lines that I'm going to mark here. This is the hole for the turntable control. However, I want to just start by showing you a wiring diagram. Okay, so this is a wiring diagram, which this is the bus power coming in from the actual power bus, runs through a switch, runs through a diode. We have to have a resistor in here for the diode. So there's actually two circuits. This circuit here completes through the light. So when the switch closes, the light comes on, because this circuit is complete. There's another circuit here that goes to the track feeders. Okay, so we go from the switch to what we'll call the positive or red side of the track feeder, and down here the negative side of the track feeder connects back to the system, and so that completes the circuit. When the train sits across these tracks, that completes the circuit. Okay, now this looks pretty straightforward, and I think it's kind of a standard thing when you have this schematic or this wiring diagram in front of you. It looks pretty simple. Okay, pretty straightforward. But when you actually look at what it looks like in real life, this is what you get. So what I have done, I've taken one extra step, and that is I have separated the wires by these connectors. And the reason I've done this is in case I want to move this control panel at any time, I can just go through and unscrew this side, and then unscrew this side, and then I can just remove the control panel and move it somewhere else or put a new one in, whatever. But you can see the confusion of how to actually make that wiring diagram happen in reality is pretty intense, and you really have to sort of get your head around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the camera up, going to bring you back, and we're going to go through wiring up one of these things right from the beginning to the end. It's going to be a pretty long video, but I think in the end it'll help. If this is just how I did it. Don't have to do it this way. I'm sure there's like a million better ways to do it, but I'm just going to kind of give you an idea of how the wiring diagram gets instituted in reality. Okay, so don't go away. I'm just going to reposition the camera. Oh, sorry. And then we'll be back and show you how to go through this. Hi, we're back. I've repositioned the camera. I've kind of got it over my shoulder, so hopefully you're going to see a lot of the stuff that I'm doing here. I'll try to keep this in the camera. Okay, just going to bring that camera back and down a bit. There we go. And I'm hoping everyone can see this. Okay, good. So we're going to start with a switch. Now this is just a simple on-off switch, and you need to start by taking the little bolt off the front and then the cover. You'll notice that this is important, that this little on-off switch has a little groove in it which fits in to the switch, and a groove sort of here, and that is the off position. So you can see here, off. Now when you mount the switch into the board, you have to put it in the right way. So that little notch, it gives you direction on how to do it. Now the back of the switch is just two connections. So basically it just breaks the circuit and then connects the circuit when you click it. Okay? So now hopefully everyone can still see what I'm doing down here. So the first thing we're going to do is prepare a switch. And we need to scrub these connections a little bit. So you can see how I've scrubbed that, just roughed it up. Now, the reason we're doing this is that we're going to tin these. So I'll put some solder on them. And believe me, if you don't do this, you're going to have a world of trouble happening. And I'm just going to let my soldering iron heat up. And while that's heating up, I'm just going to try and fit my switch. So I'm going to just lower this down. I'm just putting this in here so it doesn't hit the table on the switches. And you can see the confusion of wires and things. Now what I have done is I have brought in the feeder wires from the last two tracks. I recommend that you just do one track at a time. I know it's a bit tedious, and I have done that one track at a time until the last two. I decided to do two, but I think I would still recommend that you only do one track at a time, and then all this conglomeration of wires isn't so complicated when you're just doing one at a time. So what I'm going to do now is just, even though I had previously measured the tips of these things and put them through all the holes, once I painted it, some of the paint has gone in to these holes, and believe it or not, that little bit of paint has made it so that the switch won't go in easily. So I just have to file some of this out. Now, this is a step you may not have to do if your holes were big enough to begin with. Now remember, we want our off on the top. You can have your off on the top or on the bottom, doesn't matter, but I chose to have off on the top. So I want to make sure my groove is on the top when I put this through. And there, we went through nicely. Okay, good. Now, before I actually put that in, I am going to tin it. Just needed my iron to heat up. And this is a step, if you forget to do this, or if you don't do it, you are going to have all kinds of problems trying to put the wires on this. Now what you'll want to do is just put it on there. My iron isn't quite hot enough yet, I don't think, but so I've got the solder on there now. I just want to melt it until it goes a nice shiny color. what I might do is just redo this. Just because this is exactly what happens if you don't do this step. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put some flux on there. Okay, you see what just happened? It just went on like a nice silvery glob, and that's really going to help us later when we try to attach another wire to it. So I'm just going to do the same thing on this side. There we go. See how that has gone on as a nice silver looking glob on the end. Now we can put our switch in for real. And remember, our little groove goes to the top, switch is in, put it back. We're now just gonna make sure we put this on here. Now what I'm going to do with this little screw is just screw it in until it's finger tight. And then I want to make sure it's lined up with my line. I'm just going to bring it a little bit more that way. And that looks pretty good. Then you're going to take a bigger pair of pliers, hold that switch in place from back, and just twist this on and tighten it in place. Just make sure when you're doing this that you don't grab the little metal on-off indicator because it'll bend. And then I usually click it on and off, just make sure it's nice and tight. It's not going to move. That's good. So the switch is in place. Now I'm going to make up some wires that we're going to need. So I'm going to start with a black wire, which is going to go from here where the LED resistor is going to come out down to this area here. So that's about the size I'm going to do. I always try to do a little bit bigger, maybe an inch or two bigger. It's better to have it too long than too short. Now the next little black one we're going to do is going to go, it's basically going to hook to one end here, from here, and it's going to go to the bus wire. So it's a relatively short wire. So I'm just going to do this. Sorry, now. All of these wires need to be trimmed off. And I'll show you how to connect them up. Sometimes those things get stuck in there. Now I know this is probably going to be a bit tedious watching me solder stuff a lot, but I think in the end it's better to see the whole thing, to see realistically how much time it takes. I'm just going to tin this. Now, you may not be able to see this, but I'm going to try and put it over here where you can see it. I used to get, I'd watch videos and they would do things on the videos and then cut away and you wouldn't see actually how they did it. And I got really frustrated at times. So that's when I said to myself, when I do this stuff, I'm going to try to do it, you know, within reason, from start to finish. So everybody can see all the steps involved, how it's done, and how long it actually takes. Because some of these procedures, you will have to have some time set aside to get them done. So this is the first wire we're going to make up, and you'll see how this all comes to fruition later. And another wire we're going to make up is a red one, very similar, because we're going to run this red one from this terminal here back to the track, similar to the black one we just did. So that's going to go here. So that's a bit too long. I'm going to make it about there. Just cut that one. And then our next one is going to go from the resistor to the switch from the LED. That's not very long. So it's probably about there to there. Just put this back in there. And then all of these, again, have to be trimmed and tinned. Now, just a quick note on soldering, because I used to hate soldering, and now I'm actually at the point where I'm actually starting to enjoy it. It's really relaxing to just and satisfying when you see these go together and everything works. A little frustrating if it doesn't work, for sure, but I'm actually, like I say, I'm at the point where I'm actually liking the soldering. So we're just going to tin these. And this tinning just makes things so much easier all around. When you go to attach these later on. And what I find, I just lay the wire up against the solder and boom, it's on. Got to always make sure your iron is clean. It should look like that. See that? Before every solder, and then you tin it up, and then you do the soldering. So it should be clean. Okay, that one's done. We got one more wire to do, and that one's going from this terminal to that wire there. So that's about long enough. I'm going to cut that. This back up here. These down. Again, I'm going to tin these. You can see when your iron is clean, tinning doesn't take very long. Okay, good. Okay, so now I'm going to just take these wires, set them aside. We're going to close this up. I'm going to bring in this helping hands, because now we're going to hook up the LED. So these will simplify your life. Now, this is the LED. So we're going to hook the long side to the resistor. Now it's important to use these helping hands also like a heat sink. So we're going to put this in between the iron and the LED light itself, because this will absorb some of the heat from the iron, from the soldering iron, if we're lingering too much. Now that's the whole secret to this, is get in and out quick. Okay, now you'll save yourself a lot of aggravation. If you take a little bit of time right now to set these up right. So what you want is you want about a 1/4 inch overlap, and you want those touching, or very close to touching. And then you're going to take your iron, bring in the solder, and just touch it. Now, I think I'm not real happy with that. I'm going to just do a bit more here. Now, what you want to do is just give that a tug, make sure it's hooked on there. Now, what you want to do now is get a piece of heat shrink tubing, and this is pretty small. It just fits over the resistor. And I'm just going to measure this up because you want to leave about a 1/2 inch at the end so you can solder on the wire. So I'm just going to throw this one on. Now just feed it on gently. Now getting over the resistor, sometimes you got to push a bit. And it'll bend sometimes, but you just keep firing along. And then push that right up to the end, because we don't want that shorting out. So that's kind of what we want. And I'm going to just take the iron and just melt this heat shrink on there. And I'm barely touching this. It's just nicely touching. And it'll take a few runs up and down, just get the shrink wrap heated. And you don't want to linger too much up by the LED itself. You don't want to get too much heat up there. Now really up at the top, it really doesn't matter that much. As long as that is tight on the resistor, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay. Now the end that you do want done right is this one. You'll see why in a minute. That one has to be tight. Okay, good. So now we're going to continue by soldering our first wire on. So we're going to take the red wire where we had a short one and a long one, and we're going to take the short portion of that, and we're going to solder it to the end of the resistor. And here again, just taking a little extra time here will make your life a lot easier. Now, some people have talked about winding these together. I find if you just get them to touch, just like that, you can usually get the solder on there. And get them together nicely like that. Oh, that one missed. I'm just going to try that again. Okay, I think that got it. Yep. You always give it a tug, make sure you've got them on. Then you're going to take a little piece of heat shrink, which I forgot to do. So I'm just going to unsolder that for a minute. Now, there are other ways to get around this, but I'm just showing you that we show the good, bad, and the ugly here. And that was definitely a bad one. So you put a piece of heat shrink onto this little short one first. Then you're going to solder it back on. For this one, I might come up from the underneath. hold that on there like that. And that's a good solid connection. Bring in this piece of, see, that's why you want this one tight, so that this one will slide over it like that. Now you're going to bring the iron in, reseal this. And this stuff works a lot better than electrical tape. Trust me, I have tried the electrical tape approach. And you come in and a couple days later, it's come loose. So you want to use this shrink wrap whenever you can. And I'll show you another really cool product later when we move to the inside. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same approach, but we're going to use our black wires now. I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I am going to put a piece of black over this. Now this one doesn't have to be as long. You only want to cover that. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Put your heat shrink tube on. Just bring this one here. And again, just bring these up so that they touch. Quick solder. In and out quick. That's good. This one comes off. Send this one in. I just position this one so I can get at the black one. And then we just shrink this one down. If you get this the exact right temperature, you can actually just, even when you take the heat away, you can see it shrinking still. Okay, perfect. That sounds good. So now our LED is ready to install. So I'm going to take this stuff away now. Bring this down so that we have something to board to lay on. Now the LED hole, I have the same problem, and that is that the paint has clogged the hole a little bit, so I just use this round file just to go in and out, make sure paint is off. Now if you get this type of masonite wood, if you get a little bit of a ring around here, you can just take these pliers and cut it off. Take these cutters, cut it off. It comes off really flat. It's really good. Now I'm going to take the LED and I'm going to insert it. Now look, I know there's probably a million ways to do these LEDs, and I'm probably doing it all wrong, but I like the way it looks when I'm done, so I'm going to do it this way. So you just take the LED, you shove it in, and I'm going to lift up, and I feel on the other side for it to come through slightly. There we go. Perfect. Then I just twist this slightly, bring down the black like that, and that locks it in. Okay, So there we are. Okay, so now we're gonna continue with our connecting. So the first connection we're gonna make is the black wire, and the black long wire, which was connected to the end of the resistor, is gonna go here into the black edge to the first black unit. Now I don't nail these down or screw these down until the end, and this is why, because you have to see in to see if the screw is up enough to let those wires come in, because if you don't, and you don't get it in right, and you tighten it up, it'll just come out. So you have to really make sure with these things that you've got them in the right place, and really give a good tug on it. Make sure it's in where you want it. Okay, so that's the first step. Now the other piece of this black wire is going to go onto these bus wires here. And these are the two bus wires that are coming in. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. The next step, we're going to take the short piece that was coming from the LED and the long piece, and we're going to hook it to this side, this terminal switch. So this is where you're going to be very, very grateful that you pre-tin this. So you just hit this until it goes into a very highly liquid silver all across, and then you just hold that in place and it's done. Now you could, if you don't pre-tin this, you could be here literally for 10 minutes trying to get that one connection to happen. Now this one is going to go into the red wire coming in from the track. So I'm going to hook this one in. Sorry. This screw is way out. So I'm going to have to put that one way back in. Okay, now this one's going to go in here. And you just have to make sure that you've got these underneath the screw and with the screw out enough that it's going to take the whole wire. I'm having a bit of an issue with this one because it's bent. There we go. Now again, and I know this really sounds simple, but always double check that you have the red to the red and the black to the black. Done it. See that? It's moving. That means it'll come out. So you got to redo it. This has got to go in so that it's very securely held, or you're going to come out here, track's not going to work, and you're going to go, what is going on? And it's going to be because one of these wires has not been set right and it's come out. See that? It's still moving. I'm going to try one more time, get this thing right. What I might do is this wire is a bit long, so I might bend it over. So just take it, just bend it over like this. There we go. And give it one more shot. But trust me, if you don't get this right, it will give you tons of trouble down the road. So it's worth taking the extra time, making sure that these are connected absolutely perfectly. Now, when I first, there you go. See, that's actually really tight, really good. Good connection there. When I first started doing this, I thought, well, I'm going to use suitcase connectors, especially here on the bus lines. But again, I've had bad luck with the suitcase connectors. Very first connections I didn't work. So I ditched the suitcase connectors right away. Unfortunately, I know there's guys out there that love them, and maybe I don't hook them up right or something, but I just don't like them. So I'm using the solder. Now you can't see this one, but I'm doing the same thing. Just getting till it melts into a nice silvery liquid, and then just holding it there, and that's on. Beauty. Now this one is going to come down, it's going to hook to the bus. So how do we do the bus now? Well, we take our handy spreaders, and we get on here, we just spread one, on here, spread the other one. Now this is important. With this thick wire, you've got to use flux. You got to put the flux on. If you don't, it's going to take 10 minutes to hook these things together. If you use the flux and you pre-tinned your wires, you just put a little bit of solder on the gun, take your red wire, just hold it in place, and it's literally a second and it's done. Next, we're going to locate that black wire that is coming out of here, here, and that black wire is going to go on there. And I'm going to show you a really cool product which I just discovered, which really helps with this type of stuff. Because you can see, I was giving them a tug. These are really hard to tape because they're in a T. That's how they've been soldered on. So this new product that I was shown in a store called Altronics here in Australia, Altronics, is this stuff. This is called brush-on electrical tape. Wow, this is the coolest thing. Now, you watch what happens here. You take it out, it comes out all goopy. You just make sure you get as much as you need on there. And then you take it and you apply it to the area that you want, just like that. And that is insulated and taped. Now, the only issue is you don't want it to touch anything until it dries, because it'll stick. And then we take the red one, we do the same thing. And this is just the coolest thing, I think, because it is done. Okay, so all of our stuff is hooked up. I'm just going to put the train onto the proper track. We'll be right back. Okay, so I'm just going to close this up. Okay, the switch is off. This is the switch we just hooked up. I'm going to turn on the track power, and I put the train onto the track that we just hooked up. So when I click this light should come on and you should hear the train's bell. Yeah, baby! It works. And then we shut it off. There's no power. Turn it on. There is power. And I'll tell you what, how cool is that? Okay, so I hope that helped everybody. I'm going to just go ahead and finish this last one, and then maybe put the, maybe I may do a video on putting this one in too. This is the control of the turntable. But these are, I'm just going to clean these wires up when I put this, I'll put this final switch in, clean these wires up, and then we'll come back when we do the control for the turntable. So I hope that was enjoyable. I actually had a great time. I'm really liking the soldering now. And there's nothing more satisfying than this. It works. See you later. Okay, we're back, and I've started getting prepared for installing the control panel into the turntable. Now this looks like it's going to be pretty simple. We just install this into the control panel face using a couple screws here, and then we plug this wire here into one of the outlets this way, and we plug the other end into the unit under the table, so the actual turntable unit itself. Okay, so that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now this is the unit that they give you to attach wires, so track power coming from the buses and power coming from a DC transformer. Okay, so let me just go through how I modified this DC transformer, and we'll so first of all, you need the specifications for this are that the power supply has to be between 16 and 24 volts DC and a minimum of 250 milliamps. So if we look, I'm going to try and get up here, see if you can see this. But here it basically says that this is output 18.5 volts and 3.5 amps. Okay, so this is way overkill for what we need for our turntable. However, as long as we meet the voltage requirement and we are greater, we have a supply that will supply power greater than the milliamps that are required, then this should be suitable for the power supply. Okay, so then what I did was the end on this power supply looked like this, which really doesn't help us. So I cut the end off and I spliced back the covering of the wire. On the inside, there was a white and a black and a blue wire. White, black, and blue. Now the blue was a dead wire, there was nothing in it. So white and black were the ones carrying the power. So then what I did was I tested with my voltmeter to make sure that the output was what it said. And so set your voltmeter to the DC. So on this particular voltmeter, DC is the white numbers at the top, and it's got this symbol at the top that says V, and it has a dotted line and then a solid line. I'll just see if I can zoom in so you can see that. So you'll see the white numbers, and it's got V and a dotted line and a solid line. That stands for DC. Now I just marked on mine AC and AC, so I wouldn't forget how to do that. Now because we're greater than 10 but less than 20, I've set it to 20. Now if it was going to be over 20 volts, I would have went to the 200. And then we'll see by touching the contacts of the voltmeter. So I've already hooked, as you can see, I've already hooked these wires into this little unit that they send, that Walters sends. But the wires here do actually contact these little little screws. So I'm going to just pan out a bit so you can see the voltmeter. And then I'm going to touch contacts, and hopefully this, I'm just going to set this down here just because it's hard to do. Get these wires untangled. And just watch the voltmeter, so I'm going to touch them now. And we should see some voltage happening. There we go. So it's 19.5 volts being produced. That's well within, that's almost exactly in the middle of the range that we want. So that's good. So we've got a good power supply. Okay, so that's what we're up to right now with the installation. So now this just plugs in underneath the layout. These two wires here go to the bus line. So I'm using my B1 bus. So we have these will go to the B1 bus track power. This will click in to the unit underneath the table. This will click in to the outlet underneath the table. And then this end will click into this controller, and hopefully it will all work. Now, before we get to this part and installing this part, I have to do some track trimming on the turntable and do probably do a little bit of weathering on the turntable, just because once you put that track in place, the gate in place that turns, and then you take it off again, you have to reset it. So I'm going to try and do everything I need to do before I put that in place, and then we'll program it and hopefully it'll run. So we'll move back now to the turntable and do the track cutting and do some weathering on the turntable. And then as soon as we're done that, we'll come back and hook everything up and see if it works. Okay, stay tuned. Okay, here we are. Just a quick update on how to program this turntable. So we've got the control in. Okay. Just remember, when you're testing this, you have to make sure you remember to turn your track power on. Okay, because if you don't, it'll get halfway on and off and stall. So what I've done is I've aligned this, align the track. So how you do that is you just press this each direction, and maybe what I'll do is I'll show you after we program this one. I'll show you how to do it. So I'm just going to bring this train off. So I'm just making sure that it's lined up. Okay, that's lined up. Now I program in. That's track 6. So I come here, let me just zoom in on this a bit. So the way you do this, you press the track button once, then you press and hold until the blink doubles. See how it's just doubled? Now I just punch in track 6, and I press head, and I hold it till it stops blinking. That's programmed now. Okay, so let's just see how well this worked. So I'm going to take it to track 5. And it has moved to track 5. Now I'm going to take track 6. And there it's moved to track 6. Awesome. So the way you line these up now is you take this these buttons here that go in one direction or the other. Okay, and then you want to rotate this way. You see, I'm just pressing it and letting it go. Pressing it, letting it go. Let me just zoom in here so you can see what's happening at the track. I'm pressing it, letting it go. Now I'm just going to press it little dots till it lines up perfectly. I'm going to just walk over, eyeball this. Okay, you see how it's not lined up? So I now have to press that button again. And when I get it lined up, that's one click. I might have to do another one. Actually, that is pretty darn good. I'm going to try the train on that. Sorry about the jingling camera, but I'm trying to walk around here. Let's see if the train will come on. Whoops. Got to turn on the track power. Very nice. Turn it back on. And there we have it. That's how you program this thing. It's pretty easy, and it works really well. I'm amazed at how this lines up. It's a very good kit from Wolfers. Okay, so now you know how to program. Maybe I'll just do one more so you can see. This is going to be track number 7 for me. So I'll just zoom down here. So we go track, then we click track and hold until it blinks, doubles. There you go, see how it's doubled? Then we count up to 7. And then we press head and hold till it stops. That's now programmed. Now, the head is where the little cabin is, or the little booth on the bridge. Okay, so I'm going to just move this to 6. And then I'll move it back to 7. Now let's see if it's lined up. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, I'll program the rest of these, and then we'll put the rest of that bridge together. There's a little power thing that goes over top, and then I think turntable will be a success. I think I just have a couple tracks to file down a little bit. I just a bit of a bump when they come across. So I'll just file those a bit more, and the turntable is about to be done and dusted. I just have to put that little crossbar across the top. Pretty exciting time. Wow, a lot of work on this, but it's working great. Okay, talk soon. Don't go away.